forget to do that. And so I don't remember what order we did it last time, but how about we work backwards through the alphabet today? So Elijah, I think you'll go first because Mr. Swift's not here yet. So Elijah, what do you got for us today?
All right.
Oh,
I'm
I
gonna,
haven't set it so you can share change. Just a second.
yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Demo.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So everything here is still being tweaked, but it's progress, I guess.
Remind us your topic.
Right. So portals and
Oh yeah, portals. Great.
object like attributes. So it was pretty boring and not easy to show y'all last week how the portal physics stuff worked. If y'all remember last week, like the player going through a portal didn't really work. So this week
Oh man,
I'll show you that it
oh,
it like
fantastic.
it launches you better, and we'll try to get some air. Yeah, see, so that works better.
Oh wow, that is great, Elijah.
So oh wait, Zoom probably has latency, so it's probably all jittery for y'all. That's unfortunate. So and then I added a grabbing kind of thing, so you could like grab objects and either you could drop them or you could like launch them. So it's pretty that's one way also to like, oops, I hit the wrong button, showing like, I don't know how the physics goes through portals. I want portals to be able to be placed on slanted surfaces.
Yeah.
That is not working very well, so I have to figure out, like, sometimes I can get to glitch and work. So that's something oh shoot. I come back. So that's something that I want to work on, so it's more reliable. Oh, almost made it. But anyway, so it's just been fun to play with.
It's
Um,
fantastic.
yeah. Also getting the darts, like before, it was using ray tracing just from your camera to place the portals. But I wanted to have these darts. I don't know if y'all can see the dart that's being shot.
Yep.
You know, so places wherever the dart is, that was pretty tricky to. Yeah, so once it's on a slanted surface, it doesn't want to like place the portal every time. Like now it won't place the orange ones. So I have to fix that. It hates slants. It doesn't like slants. But I think they'd be so cool to have slants. So I want them.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, that's great. I'm really stunned that you were able to get this all working with all the
yeah,
physics that's going through it. It's just fabulous.
and being able to like pick things up and throw things has made like testing and so much more enjoyable. What is happening? Guy really hates the slants. Yeah, so we'll see if I can figure the slants out.
Glitches are to be expected. There you go. Comes right
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. So that's what I got.
Okay. Well, any comments, questions, or suggestions for Elijah?
I have a question, more suggestion, I guess.
Name.
This is Apon, and I was gonna ask. So now you have the projectiles that shoot the portals. Were you
Yes.
planning on making like puzzles with that? Like, oh, so you have to get in a certain range now because your projectile only goes so far.
Right. Yeah. So the projectiles have like drop, I guess,
Yeah.
So that'll be part of it. And then also it's like I think I might make like some objects too heavy. So there might be a projectile to be like, I can shoot this box and make it light so I can pick it up. So yeah, being in range of all the objects and the places that you want to go is definitely part of it. The original portal like code that I was taking this from has had the ability to shoot, like place portals through portals. So like let me restart it so I can kind of show you. So like, I guess if we had a portal here and a portal here, right? If I were to shoot through here and it would place a portal on the ground, like through the portals, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I may try and see if I can get that to work with my darts. That way, you know, you can get further by like
Yeah.
portaling through each other. I don't know.
Is it because like the hitbox or the, you know, like the rigid body in the box is too big, or is it just because the portals just don't let it go through?
Right now my darts don't have the portal. Like there's a script that allows things to go through portals. What is it called? So maybe if we just add it, it'll just work. That would be cool. It's cool when things just like work. Oh no, it hates that. Okay, so I can't do that, so I'd have to figure that out.
Cool.
Yeah.
There are always more puzzles to be solved. Any other questions, comments, suggestions for our portal emulator? Originally, you talked about rewinding time too. Is that fallen off the menu?
No, I want to do that next because I think that would be really cool if I can get objects to like rewind through the portals. That may be a little tricky to do based on how like the rewinding worked, like saving its locations, but I think that'd be really cool.
It was Brackeys, right, who did rewind?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It's fairly straightforward. It's just rigid bodies that have position and rotation recorders on them that they just and it's got some first in, last out queue on them or something that maintains a list, and it'll rewind for a certain amount of time.
Even if I can't get it to work with the portals, I still think that could be a pretty cool thing to like, I don't know, build bridges or something for the player to help move them around. Still think that could be pretty cool.
Yeah. So we got a comment here. Matt says 15 years portal still stands out. Yep. It's crazy. Okay. Any other questions? And has Mr. Swift come? Yeah, Forrest, you're up next.
All right. I don't have a ton to show off this week, but I could show a funny bug that I'm encountering.
Okay.
So I've been working on my capstone project, which is why I haven't had a ton of time, but I was trying to get the cameras to follow the player. And right now the cameras do follow a player when they join, which is awesome. But then as soon as another player, sorry, my dog, as soon as another player joins, they steal the camera. So from everybody, one moment. So each time you add another player, they just steal the camera, and everyone follows them moving around, which isn't great. I think that what I need to do, there's a script in the tutorial that I'm trying to follow where if you assign the main camera as a Cinemachine virtual camera to a player when that client joins, hopefully that will work. But I haven't quite gotten there.
So you're using Cinemachine cameras on this thing?
Yeah. I actually don't have my project open, or I could show you, but so right now the Cinemachine is just a child of the of each client of each prefab. But that's one that doesn't work with the rotation, which is why I had to turn off the aiming at the mouse pointer function. Because when you're a child, it's just going to follow the rotation. And then also it doesn't seem to be working because it's stealing the camera. But in the tutorial, there was a better way to do it where you put a script on the main camera and also assign the main camera as like a Cinemachine brain and a Cinemachine virtual camera. And then each time a client joins, it will just on the client's side steal the camera for themselves.
Okay.
So that's where I'm headed.
Yep. I've never worked Cinemachine with multiplayer. I've just used the standard camera, and it just kind of is local is enough to control it, but I don't know about Cinemachine. That's a whole nother deal. Any questions, suggestions, comments for Mr. Swift's multiplayer?
I had a question, Story. I don't know if you know enough about Cinemachine, but could you give like a brief description of what it is and how it's different from a camera?
I really don't know that much
Okay.
about it. I think what it essentially is it's like an empty object that has a bunch of extra scripting on it, and then it tells the camera where to go when like at runtime. But that's just my understanding of it.
So is the idea that all of your players are going to be sharing one camera? It's just like that camera is like jumping around all over the place quickly?
I think technically what's happening is each client, each version of the program has their own main camera. The problem is that it's assigning all of the main cameras to follow the newest player. And the tutorial that I'm following recommends using Cinemachines to get around that.
Gotcha.
Cinemachine is a fantastic camera system, and if you want, I have a lecture on it that we'll get to eventually, I hope. But if you want to look ahead, go to YouTube and look at the 412 channel of pre-recorded lectures where there's one on Cinemachine.
Awesome.
Cinemachine has like 5 different pre-programmed cameras, but it's also a very generic camera that you can just use to switch among different points of view just by changing the priorities of the camera. Whoever's the highest priority gets shown, and so in scripting you can switch priority, and it smoothly moves from one camera to the other. So you have a single real camera that is controlled by these virtual cameras whose priorities determine who's in charge. And it also has a really fantastic dolly system that, you can set up these virtual tracks that the camera has to stay on, and you can set it so that it moves to the either closest or furthest position from the target. It's a really powerful tool, and if you're into high-tech camera issues, it's way better than the standard assets cameras. And it doesn't seem that laggy either. It's pretty good. Any other questions, comments, suggestions for the multiplayer? You're going to have to start working on shooting soon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of people in a room. Okay. Well, moving backwards then through our list. Ms. Rumsey, are you here? Yeah, there you are. Okay.
I am, yes. All right. Let me share my screen here. All right, so last time I was here, I had a really terrible error in Xcode. I still have it. I spent a week without my computer in the UK, and then I got COVID coming home. So it's been terribly unproductive couple of weeks. Yeah, it's not great, but I did get some progress, not with the haptics, but I'm able to have my camera follow my little guy here. And so there's some maze things, but when you make it out of the maze, it changes the screen. So a little bit of progress, which is great. And I'm working on, I have a meeting after this to work on my haptic errors.
Did you ever get the haptic system to work with your iPhone or whatever the mobile is?
I did at one point, yes. And yeah.
Good.
So, yeah,
worked at one point suggests that it broke at another.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, good. Well, I hope you're feeling better. And did you say you went to UK?
Yeah, I was in Scotland for a week.
Well, that sounds like fun, except for the COVID.
Great, yeah.
Okay, any suggestions, comments for Roshin? No? Peter, you're up. You here?
Yeah, sorry about that. I was getting that myself unmuted. So let me share my screen.
Well, Roshan, you got to unshare.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Great. So I should be able to
What's the
share
IRN BRU, Matt?
racing game. You guys should see it now, hopefully.
Okay.
Great. So the progress I made this week was I continued to work on the script for my car. I successfully have the car moving. Let me just get this out of the way. The car moves. I added some trees in for reference points. It behaves a little weird right now. Like for some reason, the acceleration is slow, and then all of a sudden the car gets like out of control fast. And then it starts like skating around. So I definitely have to work on like some of my mathematical functions in there and some of my logic on like how the car behaves. There are some aspects of it that work really well. Like, I don't know if you just saw there. I was trying to lose control of the car by like going back and forth. So there are some physics that do work really well. I don't want to claim they're accidental, but partially accidental. But that is how coding goes sometimes. So the car does move. It does respond like it should in a lot of ways. I just have to get it. The acceleration has to be better. And then also the turning, like low speeds, it turns pretty well. Like this is how you would expect a normal car to handle at low speeds. But with this sports car, I really want to make it agile. So when, say, I go through these goalposts, like to turn, I like start skating here. I can feel it because I know what controls I'm hitting, but I'm starting to skid and then I lose control. So there's just like a lot of physics I have to work on still. I could show you guys my script if I switch over to my, you guys should be able to see my Visual Studio now. So this is the script I'm running for it. It's pretty basic. There's just like some mathematical stuff. This script I actually based on a YouTube video I was watching, and the YouTube video is pretty long. So just like still trying to figure out what all these functions do exactly. I have a really good grasp on what the code is doing. It's just now about like really fine tuning it. This is a very basic car controller right here. I have like adjusted some stuff for what I need. But this is a very basic car controller. So I think I'm just going to keep building off of this. This is like a really good right now.
One suggestion, I go back to your fixed update function there. So that has the get input in the fixed update.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend not doing keyboard input in the fixed update, because the fixed update runs at regular time intervals. And so you frequently will miss input. So probably it's better if you put the get axis horizontal and vertical in the update function and have it define global variables like horizontal input and vertical input that are then used by the handle motor and handle steering. Because otherwise you sometimes miss input when it's only coming in every 0.02 seconds instead of every frame.
Right.
And this is a common problem with rigid body controlled characters, is that the input's in the fixed update, and it shouldn't be. It should be in the update.
Okay.
But
So
I don't know if that'll fix your skating problem. The other thing to do with skating, of course, is to fiddle with the traction, the sideways traction of your wheels. And a quick way to do that is through the stiffness setting. You can kind of leave the defaults on it and just up the stiffness, and that'll make the tires more sticky.
Okay.
And the other thing to do is to move the force contact point up from the ground. Like I think the default with the wheel colliders puts the force contact position at the ground.
Right.
And this tends to make very tippy cars, particularly if they're sticky, which is sometimes good. You want a sticky car that rolls if you corner too hard.
Right. That might be helpful for some of the other cars that I want to get to. I feel like the sports car is really going to flesh out. I think I'm starting with one of the harder cars I have. If I just started with like the garbage truck or something that handles like crap anyway, it might be easier to just create like a very, you know what I mean? Like it's not going to have a very fleshed out physics system. It drives like a box pretty much. So,
yeah, and the other thing, you might want to move to like the multi-camera or some other camera system that's not so rigidly attached to the back of your car. You get a much better feel for things if the camera is kind of slopping around a little bit.
Okay.
And the standard assets multi-camera is a good choice for something that follows the car, but doesn't do it as a fixed point of view.
Okay.
Yeah. So any questions, comments, suggestions for Peter?
I have a question about your editor. Do you have any sort of library? I don't know what VS Code calls them, but like we'll say libraries to help you with Unity highlighting, like or autofill?
Yeah, I think VS Code has packages like that. I don't know if I'm running it exactly, but is that like some macro stuff where you start typing and
yeah, so if you're like typing in,
autofilling?
Unity's like transform variables, it'll like autofill. You could autofill for transform.
I don't have those, but
Okay.
I really appreciate that suggestion. I will go and add them.
I've become so addicted to that I can't use a regular editor anymore.
Yeah, it's like I don't remember like all of Unity's special functions, especially with transforms and stuff. But you have to use, what is the other? It isn't that VS Code, it's the other VS Code that Unity automatically comes with and launches, and it's so slow and laggy. But it has that autofill stuff, so I wanted to find something different.
Okay.
There's the old mono develop too that you can get from the from some of the older versions come with mono develop, I think it's called, and it's a editing system, and it works pretty well too.
Okay. Yeah, I think it looks like VS Code has something, so I'll definitely look into it. Thank you, Elijah.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments, suggestions for Peter? Okay, make your suspensions more bouncy too, so that you can actually see them moving. I mean,
Okay.
That's my personal opinion, that you should see action in the cars, but that's a personal choice. Real cars have very rigid suspension, I know.
Mhm.
All right, moving continually backward, Mr. Howe, are you here? How?
Yeah, I'm right here. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, you ready?
Perfect. Yep. So I haven't had a ton of time to work this week with midterms and stuff, but I have got my movement all done, and I've started doing basic animations on my main character. 1 second. The unit Zoom is blocking my play button. There we go. So I've decided to make my main character a whale on a skateboard, and I've gotten his basic movement done and his animation for it done. So he switches when you go up, down, and then has a movement for that. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I've gotten done so far, but I've also gotten
He wags his tail too.
Yeah, that's how he's supposed to be pushing. And I've gotten a pirate. I don't know if you could see that. is this showing up or no? No. Oh, 1 second.
Well, we can see him in the lower left-hand corner.
Yeah.
Lower right-hand corner.
I have a pirate animation that or not an animation yet, but just a sprite that I've started for an enemy, as well as a crab somewhere in my art or animations here. Crab, which here, I think I showed that off before, but yeah, so I've gotten his animations done and I've started working on some enemies. And my next step was, I was thinking about actually working on my terrain and getting it to procedurally generate and trying to I was trying to look for some asset on like path creation between my islands, because that's how I was planning on like going between 2 islands. I haven't found anything, so I think I'm gonna have to do it myself. And yeah, but no luck on that so far.
Okay, cool.
So
any comments, questions, suggestions for Mr. Howe?
Was this the
Who we got here? Story.
yeah, sorry. Was this project the beach like dungeon crawler?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I've started work also on a lance for the whale on the skateboard, because I figured that was like one of the best weapons I could use for a whale on a skateboard, like a jousting lance for like a knight. So
turn that whale into a narwhal.
Maybe another character. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I was thinking like you're gonna have some sort of like blowhole attack or something.
Yeah, I already have blowhole like animations done for him, so I just haven't implemented it yet. So
okay. Cool. I'm sorry, I'm looking at chat, and Matt had brought up the IRNBRU, which turns out to be a soda, pronounced iron brew. That's very funny. All right, well, moving backwards, Matt, you're up.
Hey, let me get my screen sharing thing going here. I've done a bit in the past week, but I'm not sure how much is actually going to be possible to demonstrate. All right, is it showing up here? All right. So sure. First, I did actually put a collider on the terrain so you could walk around on it, but play mode's not working right now because I've moved on to working on other stuff. So I've been working on shaders because the Sebastian Leg videos use a custom shader to colorize the terrain, and then eventually it's used to texturing. So
I hope you're in URP and not HDRP.
Yes, it's URP. That's the issue. Is
my computer doesn't like HDRP.
So he wrote the shaders, the old way for the standard render pipeline, and not using URP, I can't use those at all because they're different. And so I'm trying to redesign them in shader graph, which is presenting difficulties, but so far I've got it working. I can change like any of these colors out here and change like the heights of these, and it will update them in real time. So one of the issues with shader graph is it, like the job system, it has limits on what information you can pull into it. So with the old shader, he was using these like an array of height values and an array of color objects that it was pulling in and calculating what each face should be colored. But you can't use arrays for anything other than textures in shader graph. So I devised a workaround. I'm actually generating a texture that's like segmented in different colors, and then passing that in as one texture, and then it's able to calculate the heights by how tall those segments are in the texture.
Can I ask a question? Why did you go to URP instead of using the standard shaders?
I started the project with URP, and so it was too late, basically.
It's too late, basically. Okay. Okay. Well, scripts probably move, if you had to go back, you could just import the scripts and attach them to different objects and
Yeah.
go back to it so that you wouldn't have to wrestle with shader graph, which is powerful. There is a shader graph lecture on the YouTube in the 412 channel or playlist or whatever it's called. And I don't know if there would be any information in there that might help you. I did a bunch of stuff with like moving textures and moving vertices, which I don't know if that'd work with your terrain, but it's funny that there doesn't seem to be lighting in this. It doesn't.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a lit shader, so I'm
Yeah.
not sure why it's not.
URPs, these render pipelines are their own can of
Yeah.
worms. Yeah, look, there's shading there, but
It just looks odd.
Maybe it's just very saturated somehow.
Yeah. I'm gonna keep going on this for a little bit, try to get texturing going in it and see how it works. If it becomes too much of a thing though, I might look into seeing if I can just like copy the scripts into a standard pipeline project and
Shader graph is quite a tool, and there are some really nice tutorials out there on it, and it is extremely powerful to write custom shaders. But I'm not a big fan of these point and click programming systems. I'm kind of a text program flow kind of guy.
Yeah.
And connecting all the little wires. It makes programming easy, but reading a shader graph, like if you open one of the advanced ones that they've got that has like 45 different little windows connected by 1,000 little wires, trying to figure out what they've done with it is like almost impossible. But it is a powerful tool and certainly classified as an advanced topic. So go forth and prosper. Any questions, suggestions, comments for Matt?
Story here. So you have 3 different colors on the map right now. Are you going to add more colors so it's more like a higher resolution for, I guess, what the textures you're going to replace those with?
Yeah, so it's fully dynamic. If I go in here, I can put
I didn't
4
see
colors.
the size. Whoa.
And now I can just say, all right, here's a black color, and we're gonna make that, oh, my values are probably funky,
Well,
but
you probably need to add another.
oh yeah, that's what I'm missing there. There we go. See, there we go.
Right.
Another color in there.
That's
Cool.
actually pretty cool. I mean, that works. doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, it's just some like implementational details really, and eventually you're not going to see these colors anyway because there will be textures passed in that will be mapped to these zones in some way.
Right. So you're going to still use these colors for the textures to know where to go, right?
Basically.
Okay. Cool.
It is very cool. Anything else for Matt? Okay, stop sharing, and Miss Harris, you're up. Harris, Dorothy, there you are.
Sure. So I don't have a demo to show today because an error is currently preventing that,
Okay,
but I can tell you what I've done.
okay.
So let's see. I started working on, I wanted to do the next thing to be like pickups so that you could like have a inventory view in the game and then actually be able to pick up items and like swap out what you look like based off that and maybe get some like boosts to your character from that. And then I started that, and then everything I saw was like, you need to have movement first, which makes sense because you can't really pick anything up if you can't move to it. So then I paused on that. And so I have that like half done. And then I went and did movement and I got movement working. And while I was at movement, I was like, I should do animation at the same time because it makes sense. But that's problematic because, and which apparently is not something that it's a common thing people have when doing customization with it, because I can't just make a whole bunch of different sprites, because then I'd have to have a sprite for like this color duck with the boots on and the hat, this color duck with the boots on without the hat. So I'd have to make like 300 of those. And so they're like, don't do that. So then you can rig up your character, but it wants it all on the same what do you call it? The little like picture file. And I can't have them all on the same one if you're swapping them. So there's a lot of like small little issues like that I'm like currently paused on that I have to figure out. I also found out one of the 2D animation, I found something that was saying a way to fix this problem, and I started working on it. And then I just realized that the 2D animation package that they wanted me to download is only working for 2018 and lower. So that's causing issues.
It's broken in 2019 or 2020?
Yes, it is broken in 2019 plus. So I have to ditch that idea and go on a new one.
Ship me a link to it and I'll look at it and see if I can fix it for 19.
Okay.
I'd be happy to give it a try, but I don't know too much about 2D stuff, but I can look at what is wrong with it for 19.
Yeah. A lot of things have started and a lot of things have not finished.
Yeah. Okay. But you got movement working. Animation, I think, is going to be a real issue because of the way animation is done in the 2D world is with these little flip cards that characters just switch between two different pixel pictures. And and that like you said, that brings you into the world of exponentially increasing things that you have to make. Okay. Any comments, questions, suggestions?
I don't know how you're doing like any of the movement, but could you just have like a base duck and then like instead of, I assume your boot sprite is like 2 boots and that's like with the sprite, could you like separate it to be like 1 boot each and then like pretend like the boots is an object and apply it like as a child to the duck's foot position?
Yeah, that's currently what it's doing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The thing I'm thinking about right now is that if I somehow make it that each, because the way that one thing showed was like you could have them all in the same file, and then there's like an animation thing where you can like just move the body parts around all together, like you put them together, but they're not all on the same thing because you can change them. So I'm wondering if I can just like animate each piece separately and then but like all next to one another when you move.
Right.
It feels kind of janky, but I don't, if I can't find a better solution, that might be what I come down to.
You know, if you look at the 3D animation characters, they're made of like 50 different parts that are connected together with as children of each other, and they have bone structures. They're very complicated, and the reason it's easy is because somebody else has done all the work of assembling these complex 3D characters that have many, many parts. And when you start from scratch with these little sprites that are the way things are done in 2D, you have to build all the parts. And I can see where it becomes a totally daunting task.
Yeah, especially because I think I want to do it more top down, which means I have more directions. So I'd also have to have ×4 however many ones I'd do that way.
Okay, Matt says you could do low budget animation like rock the sprite back and forth, squish and warp the image, etc. That's not a bad idea. Any other comments, questions for Dorothy and her duck? Okay, Mr. Hallett. Will, are you there? Hello.
How's it going? I'm still working on I guess procedural generation stuff and
You've got a
and
green screen
surfaces.
there behind you, don't you?
It's just my walls painting.
No, but it's green. You have
I can't see myself.
Oh, you can't?
Oh yeah.
Well, you have a really nice green screen. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted. Go ahead.
No, it's all right. No, I'll get my lightsaber out and yeah. Yeah, I'm working on. So I've been trying to regroup for the past few days because I've been feeling lost. I think I said this last time. I'm just feeling lost with just how many tutorials are out there on procedural generation, and so what I've done is I talked to you, Professor, and I sort of looked back at some of the lessons from last year and got into the code a little bit more. And I don't really have much to update, but if anyone wants to look at my progress report, I sort of detailed the sort of I just studied the cellular automata 2D script.
I'll be posting them soon. I've got them and in the process of processing them, but I'll post them soon so that you can look at each other. You can look at Will's report.
Yeah. So that's all. I mean, feel free to reach out with any questions if anyone's interested in cellular automata or just look at it or whatever. I can answer questions, but I don't really have too much to say that
Okay.
would be that interesting. Yeah.
Any comments, questions, suggestions for Will? It is easy to get lost in the more or less infinite world of other things that we can do in Unity. And I know I get lost in it all the time and spend a lot of time doing ridiculous things. If there are no comments, David Frumelo, you're up.
Hello. Regretfully, with midterms this week, I made minimal progress, nothing I was proud of. I did a little more work with the dialogue, add a couple more characters to go in, have a couple conversations going with them. Not a ton, not what I wanted to get to.
The demo you turned in with your rooms, the rooms look very nice.
Oh, thank you. Oh, and also, Professor, I do want to thank you for sending me the Unity 2D package. I could not find it for my life, so I don't know why.
It was on the asset store, right?
Yeah. When I clicked your link, it sent me right to it. I didn't actually type it in myself to see if that was working, but when I was looking it up, I think I was just putting in 2D package, and maybe that headline wouldn't send me anything.
There's a lot of stuff on the asset store. It's hard to find things sometimes.
Right.
I often set the filter to Unity Technologies. So I'm only looking at the stuff that Unity is providing, and they have 5 pages of stuff, but and it is weird. Some stuff gets deprecated off the asset store and it disappears from the search engine, but it's still there if you have the link. So maybe that was how it turned up too. I don't know. But one comment about the demo that you gave us, or you gave me, is that the camera view of the room, the camera didn't move with the character, so it didn't pan back and forth through the room. So your character could kind of walk off stage and disappear. But
right. I hope once I have everything complete, I think I'm gonna set colliders to the walls, and what I want it to operate as is walking into it transports you to another room.
Yeah, that'll be easy to do.
Will be, I guess, frozen in that space. So you're really only going from room to room. You can't actually walk, except maybe transition hallways.
Okay, I understand that. In that case, you want to widen the view of the camera. I was just unable to see the corners of the rooms in the game view.
Oh, maybe.
And maybe it's, it might have been the aspect ratio of my screen that did it, but those are the kind of things to sort of check. But
Sure, very good.
but your rooms were great, and they were nicely decorated, and they had refrigerators and toilets and the whole 9 yards. It looked like a fraternity house. It was great.
A clean one.
Any comments, questions, suggestions for David? I would show your demo, but I'd have to find it. Peter Kluge, you're up.
Hello. Okay, so I haven't made a whole lot of progress just because midterms, but I have a little bit I can show. Okay, so one thing I've been working on is the object cluster placer, which I mentioned last week. It wasn't actually working, but I finally managed to fix it. I was kind of banging my head against the wall for 20 minutes or so. I finally found out that I actually didn't have the terrain loaded, so it's a dumb mistake. A bunch of those, but so if we run this. The other thing I've done is make sure that it now generates everything before you get into the world. So everything is kind of run through the start function instead of through the update function, if that makes sense.
You've got 2 audio listeners in there. That's going to just.
Yes, I'm not sure what that's about.
Well, you got 2 cameras. You got 2 cameras someplace, and
okay, yeah.
And it's not a big issue, but it does actually cause lag because it's every frame it's putting that little message out there.
Yeah.
In the console. So, but go ahead. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have interrupted. Go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. And the other thing I was trying to do was trying to get a nav mesh working at runtime. I've been researching it. I haven't found a whole lot of information on it. Some people say that like there's ways you can do it at runtime. Some people say there's no way to do it at runtime. So I'm kind of stuck there.
I did nav mesh back earlier in the semester. So people who say you can't do it at runtime are absolutely wrong. You can do it at runtime.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, I did find I think it was like a GitHub repository somewhere. And it might have been even by some of the people involved with Unity who had, I guess it was like some kind of experimental thing.
That's true.
Like to do that.
Yep. But it works great.
Okay.
Go look at my lecture from earlier in the semester, although that may have been one of the ones I forgot to record. But if not, on the YouTube site, there is a lecture on, there's several of 5-minute little segments on Nav Mesh. I'll send you the notes. Send notes.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a package that you have to add, and what it gives you is something called a Nav Mesh Surface that is a component that you can put on an object, and so you could put it on your terrain, I assume, and then at runtime you can access that component, and it has a build nav mesh function that builds the nav mesh, and
Okay.
so you can set it up with all kinds of different things. It's a very powerful extension to the traditional nav mesh that must be baked before you run, and but it's completely possible, and I think I've done it in a couple of examples, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess the other thing I was worried about is it just taking too long, because the terrain is going to be different every time you hit the play button. Okay.
It's quicker than your terrain generator, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Any questions, suggestions, comments for Mr. Kluge? No? In that case, Devin, you're up. Devin? Carter? You here? I don't see him. Okay. Spencer Campbell, you're up.
All right.
Spencer? Yep.
I'm just setting up the screen sharing.
Good.
So I mean, there's really not that much at the moment to show because I'm doing most of it in the background. I have worked on adding freeform placement for the towers, so I can place those wherever I want, and it shows the AOE and everything. But I can't place it on the path, and I can't place it off the map, of course. There's also collider set up so that I can't place towers on top of each other. So that's all set up. But what I've been struggling through right now is the backend part that is included with this tower defense kit that I have, because none of the code is commented at all.
Yeah.
So like there will be huge swaths of just commented out stuff, and then entire functions with no comment on what it does. So right now, this function is just not doing anything. It's not setting up the path properly, so I can't spawn any enemies to start working with that. But on the tower side of things, it's working all right. I have like the perks working as well, where you can buy like increased health and stuff like that for all of your towers, or increased health for yourself so that more enemies can get to the end, and cheaper tower perks and stuff like that.
So this is an example of their code that comes with it. It has all
this is their code. Yeah. So it
all
has
this green stuff turned off. Isn't that weird?
So the only comments I have is this is obsolete. It's like, thanks. It's already commented out. I probably could have guessed that. And then
this is the Unity technology turrets.
Yeah.
That's weird.
So yeah, I'm just kind of
free. What do you say?
Integrating it. But yeah, I mean, the UI works fine. That's included with it, so I didn't have to do anything with that. I converted the towers to work with this top-down view. I'm gonna get some better textures for the background because I don't want to just have white path and green background. It's just boring. But the last thing I have to do, other than making the creeps spawn, is set up the perks so that you can buy them randomly, and then set up difficulty modifiers as well. But yeah, basically all it is for the last week or so is just trying to redesign their code to work with what I need, because it's not really set up to work with randomly generated maps. Like, you're supposed to have all of the waypoints for the pathfinding set out before you start the game, which of course I can't do because it's going to set the waypoints as it generates the map. And I have the waypoints all set. I just need it to fill the list properly.
The waypoints are the things that the enemies follow on the path.
Yep. So I did it. I kind of just did it brute force. I just had a waypoint for each tile, which is not the best way to do it. But I can go back in later and I can make it so just there's a waypoint at every turn instead of rather on every tile of the path instead.
Okay.
But I don't think it'll slow it down that much either way. If it does, I mean, I could just change it.
Okay, cool. Any questions, suggestions, comments for Spencer?
I have a question. This is Apon. When you're playing the game, is it a lot more zoomed in so you can see like because it looks like you have animations, and like that'd be cool to see if you were playing it.
Well, I can do. Where's the maximize? I don't remember.
Oh, it's on the right. Like, yeah, somewhere right there.
Maximize on play.
Yeah, and if you press play now, it should maximize once you click that.
Yeah, so there's a little bit more. I mean, you can read it a little bit better.
Yeah,
I should probably work on getting a higher resolution, but yeah, there is a little bit of animation. I didn't make that animation. That's just built into the turrets. But all the creeps that will be spawning and all the turrets themselves have their own little animations that are going. I'm thinking about making the turrets a little bit bigger as well, because they're kind of zoomed out with the small tiles. So I might make it take up two 2x2 tiles instead of just one, so you can kind of see each turret better.
Yeah,
a zoom and pan feature of your camera would be nice, so that you could zoom in and then pan left and right, and kind of that way you could like focus on the area where the enemies are getting through, and you could add more turrets there, and it could be interactive during play, I assume.
Yeah, and that would be pretty easy to set up. So I'll probably
Yeah.
do that at some point as well.
Okay, sounds cool. Any other comments, questions, suggestions for Spencer? Okay. Abby, you're up. Are you here?
Yes, I am. So as is the common thread, it seems I have not really had time to work on this week. I'm also kind of low-key saving it for spring break, just because I find that with Unity, I work better just being able to crank it all out than to do it in little bits and pieces. But I am hoping to have at least something to show next week. I want to try to work on the terrain, even if I can't get the joystick actually working.
All right, well, that's a very reasonable report. Spring break is coming and you'll spend it on Unity.
Yep.
Okay. Any comments, questions, or suggestions for Ms. Boucher? All right, well, final pride of place is Donato. Go ahead.
All right, let me just share my screen.
While he's doing that, I just want to comment that this class has been the most prolific demo class that I've ever done in 412. Often the progress reports are, well, I did this, I did that, but they have nothing to show. And you guys come in here every week and almost all of you show something. And I applaud you all for it. You've all been really good with this. Go ahead.
So like everyone else, there was a lot of stuff this week. So I got some stuff done. I don't remember 100% what I showed last week, so I'll try to show up only the new stuff from what I remember. One of the new things is I tried to make it, I wanted to mess around with the map generation. And I realized one of the first things I needed was to have the enemies randomly spawn, and how the game, if you played Slay the Spire, you would also know this, but there's two different enemy type encounters besides the final boss. There's minor enemies and then major enemies. And so I needed it to be able to randomly spawn when you go to a minor enemy room, a set of minor enemies. So I ended up creating that. It's just a random enemy spawner. It's actually really simple. I tested out by just changing one of the slimes to be slightly green, and it will spawn a random set of two of those. I can easily change it to make it set to so it only spawns one of them maybe, or three of them. It's just I can make it completely random within a range. So I got that working, which I'm pretty happy about. I tried getting the health bars on these enemies, and I'm still having issues with it. And it's mostly because of the way I set up the health bars for and like the way it all gathers all the information. It's all under the same thing for the player characters. This is the enemies. So I'll have to mess around with more with that, but I'm leaving that for future me. That's the main thing I got in Unity, and then I decided I needed more enemies to actually experiment more with the different types of encounters. So I decided to go back to creating some sprites. If I go here to the one saved in browser, so I made a few. I like doing this because it's easy and it's fun. I made a little like snake guy. He's probably going to be like a little bit of a harder fight because I wanted to have some differentiation, like different kind of levels of combat you can find in whatever you get. I ended up making a boss out of 2 phases. He's got like, I tried to make it like he's not exactly a person because his eyes change colors, because the second phase kind of shows what he really is. So the idea is that you beat him, and then you get to the second phase where he turns into a giant snake. I decided to make it this 128 by 128 instead of 64 by 64, just to make it, because I know it's going to be a lot bigger. I don't want it to make it look like it's all stretched out.
Cool.
And then, yeah, I got like a couple more guys. I didn't do much when it comes to technical stuff. I made a zombie. Thought that'd be fun.
This pixel art is funny.
Yeah, it's always pretty fun. This guy, I don't even know how I ended up thinking about this one. I think I just started making like one of those little garden gnomes and he turned into a wizard. So that was just something I was like, yeah, you're a lightning wizard now. But that's pretty much all I did for this week.
Okay, well, that's pretty cool. Any comments, questions, suggestions for Donato?
Are you gonna have like sorry, I have a question. I wasn't ready to formulate it. When you do attacks or when enemies do attacks, are you gonna have some sort of visualization of like the attacks?
Yeah,
going to people?
I still gotta decide if I want to do full on animations, and that's just gonna be a matter of time. The least I want to do is just have the character just literally just quickly drag over to the side, and just so even if they don't do an animation, you can
Right.
see that something's happening, because at
Right.
the moment you're clicking the button and the text changed. But even when I was doing it, it's like it kind of gets hard to tell, like, did that attack actually go through? I
Right.
there's so much going on the screen, so that is definitely something I got to do. It's just more of do I have the time to animate all those, or am I gonna drag them across the screen?
Start off by dragging them, and
Yeah.
and this summer you can finish the animation.
Yeah.
Well, like, does Unity have a 2D particle system?
I have no
Like-
idea.
I think so.
Like maybe instead of like animating it yourself, if you could get it so it kind of has the same style, like, oh, I just shot fires, like fire particles
Yeah.
going off,
Yeah, definitely for like stuff like that. That's gonna be a lot easier because I could just spawn like some particles on the enemy and just say, "Yep, it hit." Is your magic ranged attack?
Right. Cool.
Cool. All right. Any questions, comments, suggestion? Elijah definitely dominated the comments this week.
I have a lot of questions in life, so
Yeah. Well, that's good. Let's see. Anything else? Roshan says your characters look fantastic. I agree.
I have just one quick thing. This is Dorothy.
Yeah.
You were saying you could just drag the characters. In theory, if you didn't want to do too much animation, but you want to do like a tiny bit, you could just make like a fire image and drag that across.
Yeah, I was
So
debating
it's
on
like
that.
the middle ground of the two.
The half baked animations. Yeah, that's that's all something I gotta figure out. At the very least, though, something's gonna be dragged across the screen.
Good suggestion. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Well, let me share screen and clean this up a little bit here. So, as you guys probably are aware, I'm a big fan of physics in Unity, and I stumbled on I think it's a 2-minute long YouTube tutorial on how to do a conveyor belt in Unity. And I remember back from Unity 3 or 4, the standard asset character with a script written in JavaScript was able to jump on moving objects and have, you could have a rotating object that the character could step onto and it would rotate with it. But it was all done in this JavaScript character controller, and it had a Boolean toggle on the inspector that said that it could move with rigid bodies, and it was a nightmare. But this tutorial shows a really slick and strange way of doing it. And it's totally counterintuitive, and yet it produces a physically correct conveyor belt. And so let me just show you the demo here. Here's my conveyor belt, and I'm dropping objects on it, and the objects stick to the thing and they roll along here and they fall off the end of it. And we have this apparent conveyor belt that that works. So in setting this thing up, there's some orientation that is necessary. One, the conveyor belt object, its Z direction, its forward direction, is the direction that the conveyor belt's going to move. The hardest part of this was getting the texture to move as well. And so I'll show you that as we go along here. The Y direction up is the surface that scrolls. So just some convention for the directions that we've got here. Now, the whole thing is basically 3 lines of code. Done in the fixed update, because of course we're doing physics here. And the 3 lines of code are that one, we catch the rigid body's position, just with rigid body dot position, stored in a vector, and then we reposition it. We move it backwards a little bit. So it's minus transform forward with the scale Z you'll see in a minute here, times the scroll speed and a fixed delta time. So that RB position sets it back. And then we move it forward, but this time we move it with a move position, rigid body move position, which takes a vector displacement, well, a position that we're moving to. So we've moved the object backwards a little bit using RB position, and then we move it forward with RB move position. And if you read the scripting, rigid body position changes the position kind of instantaneously. The transform's updated after the next physics step. So this kind of teleports the thing to, whereas rigid body move position with a vector 3 position complies with the interpolation settings. So the rigid body does not teleport, it moves gradually. Whereas dot position teleports, dot move position smooths the transition over several frames. Now, we're not moving it a great deal because we're only moving it by the scroll speed times the fixed delta time, which is 0.02 seconds. It's 30 frames per second. So we're not moving it very much. We're just moving it a little bit and back and a little bit and back. And that's the trick, because during the move position, it's complying with the interpolation settings. It's moving gradually, and the physics system is working as you move position a rigid body. Whereas when you rigid body dot position, you're teleporting the object, and the physics is kind of ignored because you have this instantaneous change in position. So the rest of this is getting the scrolling texture to match the speed that the objects are carried along. And that's why that scale Z is in there. That's the Z dimension scale of my object, how long it is in its Z direction. And so the scrolling has, this is the whole code here. We've got the scroll speed and this vector 2 temp that we're going to use for moving the texture along its material. So catch the scale, catch the material, catch the rigid body, and then in the fixed update, we access the material's main texture offset. That's the thing that you see in the inspector for the material that allows you to offset the texture. And so catching a copy of that, moving the Y by our scroll speed, time, fixed delta time, and then putting it back into the texture, that makes our texture match our moving object. So here in this sample, I've got a little, the P key, it increases the scroll speed, and I can see how far I can fling my objects here with by making sort of a little rail gun that flings my objects through space. So of course I get obsessed with these things and start making more and more things. And so here I've got a little conveyor system that is going to cycle these things around, and I end up sitting here watching these things do funny stuff. And I don't think I have, I don't have the scroll speed set on that one. Same kind of thing with Bouncy Cubes, behaves a little differently. Whoops, I didn't want to start that. I'll let you play with them in more detail. I put spheres on this one to kind of see what would happen with spheres as they rolled along on moving conveyors. And they behave physically correctly. The balls have a certain momentum, and they have friction with the different surfaces, and so the balls behave kind of the way I would want them to. I forget what this one is. Oh, this was just, I got carried away with making a box that had kind of scrolling conveyors on the inside of it, and I filled it with balls, and it works. It's very physically correct here. So that's basically the conveyor. So in looking at the rigid body, I found that there was also a rigid body rotation, dot rotation, analogous to rigid body dot position. And there's a rigid body move rotation analogous to the rigid body, what's it called here? Move position. So I thought, okay, I can make a turntable that rotates. With the rotating turntable, I couldn't do the same texture translation that I did with the conveyor belt. So I had to do the texture of my rotating turntable quite a bit differently. I have kind of a root object that's, of course, a flattened cylinder. It's an kinematic rigid body. It has a capsule collider. It has a mesh collider, and no mesh renderer, because this is the invisible object that's going to rotate, and it has a child that that has no collider, that has the visible texture on it, and presumably it rotates with that object. The rotator has exposed rotate speed and the visible cylinder that it has to move around to match the move. Remember, the cylinder is not actually rotating; it's just moving forward a little bit and then back a little bit and forward and back. So it's just kind of twisting a little bit, once with the rotate and the other with the move rotate. And the visible cylinder, we have to keep track of its position. So the rotations are all quaternion. So I have a plus rot and a minus rot. One is the quaternion that's going to rotate me forward, and the other the quaternion that rotates me backwards. I've got my angle, that's my rotation speed, and I form these two quaternions through the Euler with the plus or minus angle on them. And I've got the rigid body. And then the fixed update is just, I do the rotation with the plus rot. Remember, scaling a quaternion by another quaternion, multiplying them makes a rotation. And then I rotate back with the minus, well, I rotate with the minus rot, and then I move rotation with that original rot that was just the rigid body's rotation times the plus rotation. And the visible object keeps up with these things. So here's a little turntable. The little turntable has drops cubes on it, and it behaves physically correctly. Let me go to the next one here where I can adjust the speed of this thing. So being able to adjust the speed, I can now speed this thing up. And if I speed it up enough, we start to see centrifugal force flinging these objects off the turntable. And so all very cool. And I think I've got a setup with balls on the turntable. And so the balls kind of roll around, and they experience, I believe you might actually call it a Coriolis force here. If I speed up the spinning, these things kind of get flung off, and there's a lot of complex physics going on here that Unity takes care of. So having all these different components, I started making ramps and setups and different things that my dropped objects get carried along on. So I've got balls and cubes being dropped on this thing that the little conveyors kind of overlap with each other in places so that they transfer from one to another and get carried along. And of course, with more time on my hands than you can imagine here, I made bigger and bigger arrangements, and finally I incorporated that box here. I got tired of waiting for my dropped objects to populate the entire scene. So I put in a tool that adjusts the rate at which time passes in the simulation. So this is not changing the speed of the objects. This is changing the time scale. And so I can speed this up and kind of fill the thing up with stuff. And once I get it kind of populated with stuff so that I can watch it, then I can slow it back down to regular time and watch all these different objects get bounced around here. By the way, I'm using Cinemachine as my camera here. This is one of the default cameras that lets you move your mouse up and down and change the point of view here. I've got big conveyors on the bottom here for things that fall off the tower, and they're just all kind of being sucked and carried around. And I believe these objects all have finite lifetimes, so they don't overwhelm the system completely. So, and of course, I decided I needed a character to participate in this thing. So I kind of took the script off the controllable ball and modified it for a cube, because it's an interesting little character to be able to roll around with the WASD. And so my little character here, I can clobber my way over and get on one of the conveyors And away we go for a ride amongst all the different objects that are here. And I can move the position around. And of course, embedding that in one of the big simulations here, one of the big fancy things with stuff going on. And I think I've got the time tool here so I can kind of fill this up a bit. So at some point I want to move my little character around while I'm in the world. And I don't know what you do with this, but it's certainly an interesting mechanic for some kind of game. I don't know, but and there's a controllable ball too that you can go in. I think it's the same scene where we here are playing with a little controllable ball that we can drive around in the scene. One thing I haven't tried is to put Ethan or one of the other characters in here to see what they do. I haven't tried that yet, but I can drive the ball around and get out on the world here where things get kind of confusing. So that was amusing and really simple and completely non-intuitive. You know, like I've seen these conveyor belts that are built out of chains of objects that kind of move around and they come back and they go around, and there's all kinds of stuff in terms of controlling those objects and building them multiple things and having the rigid bodies move around and stuff like that. And this idea of just moving it forward and back with two different mechanisms, one a teleport and then a move forward, and a teleport back and a move forward, it works. It makes the physics behave really well. So continuing on with the physics here, Unity has something called inverse kinematics for the characters, for the animation system. And it's fairly complex, and I've never figured out how to use it. Anybody who wants to take that on as an advanced topic, that'd be fine. But this is a kind of simple inverse kinematics for animating a robot arm, essentially, is what we're doing here with this. Is this thing opening? It's already open. Okay, so here's kind of a simple robot arm that we might find on some asset store somewhere. And here, if I play this thing with the Z and A keys, I can move the target of the inverse kinetics around. I can move it back and forth and up and down. And all of the positions of the different joints follow the target, this little point here that I'm moving around with the ZA, XS, and CD keys. And this is done again with a fairly short 2-minute tutorial on how to do this, although the guy provides us with a GitHub that has the code and some other stuff. And what he's describing is something he calls fabric, forward and backward reaching inverse kinematics. And I'm not sure if this is his name or if he's just implemented a particular algorithm. It's relatively easy to use and implement compared with a lot of IK methods. Inverse kinetics is hard. It's an NP complete problem, and so is often done with heuristics. So what do I exactly mean by inverse kinetics? Well, forward kinetics is where you have the length and angle of each of your members of your object, and from basic trigonometry, you can calculate where the end of your chain of objects is. You know the L's, you know the thetas, and you know where the object's position is. Inverse kinematics is where we know the lengths, but we don't know the angles. And we have a goal where we want to put the end of the object, and it has to find the angles that will reach the goal. The fabric, like many inverse kinetic methods, is a heuristic. It doesn't yield necessarily the perfect answer, but it will find a pretty good guess. And it does this iteratively. By updating the position of the joints, and we do this in a relatively simple fashion. So we have our picture here. We've got the different points, P1, P2, P3. I'm sorry, I'm a Fortran guy. And length D1, D2, and D3, and we have a target that we want to go to. And from each of we actually just define the P's, and the D's are just the difference between them in 3 dimensions, of course, because we're in Unity. And we have our target. So the first phase of the iteration is, well, if the target's not reachable, we can just make a straight line that points out to them. So there are 2 stages to the iteration. There's the backwards stage and the forward stage. And in the backward stage, we just basically move the end of our chain to the target point and put it there, and then adjust the positions of all of the rest of them constrained by the lengths of each of the members. And then the next stage well, let me just show you. So here's our little thing. So the backward stage, we move our P4 point to the target, and then we adjust the position of P3 by moving it along the line between P3 and the target, constrained by the fact that D3 has some particular length. And then I adjust P2 and I move it along the line to P3, constrained by its length D2. And then I move P1 along the line, constrained by its length D1. So now we have a gap here at the beginning. So that's the first step of the iteration, the backwards phase. We then have a forward phase where I move the points back so that P1 is now back at where it started, and I move P2 back to where it's constrained by the D1, and P4 back to where it's constrained by P3, and so forth. And now we have a little gap at the target. But the gap has gotten smaller. The gap has gotten smaller in that iteration. And if we repeat that enough times, it gets close enough that we can accept it as a heuristic approximate solution. So we stop iterating after it's within a certain range or after a maximum number of iterations has occurred, because sometimes there are unstable solutions. So D.E. Ditzel provided code in a GitHub that I've fiddled with a little bit, but basically it has, this is the fast IK fabric method. in it, we set up all of the bones that we're going to make our object out of. We have all the positions, we have the bone lengths, we have some start directions, rotations, and the target rotation. And we go through and basically set up all of the different lengths between the different points, their rotations and orientations, and an error trap for the start rotation of the root object. The root object, well, this is to deal with an error that if the chain value is too long. So this is done in physics. So we do it in, well, no, it's not done in physics. We do this in the late update. There's update and late update. One just runs before the other. Some bailouts if it has no target. If the bone length is different than the chain length, this might mean that you have changed the number of links in your object. And then we go through, catch the positions of all the bones here, the rotations, the root bone, bone 0, these are all done as hierarchical, as parent-child things. So I have the different joints as children of each other here. So the base bone can either have a rotation or we can have it be fixed. So the first test is to see if we can actually reach the target, because that's just how long our chain is and the distance between them. And if this is true, then the solution is simple. We just make a straight line that points out to it. But otherwise, we go through and snap back the positions to their previous setting. And then we go through our iterations. We have the backwards phase where the counter is decrementing. We're working backwards through our list, and we're just updating these positions and moving them along the direction of the bone length between them. This puts them on the line between the object and its predecessor. And then we have the forward iteration where we're now going up through our for loop, doing essentially the same thing. So these two are kind of identical, and then testing to see if we're close enough, in which case we break. And I believe I did this as an I enumerator. No, I guess I didn't. But anyway, when it's close enough, we break. And so here's a little hand-built one, and it has an auto move on it that is going to move the little thing around. It's got a little auto move here. There you can see the target's too far away. It just makes a straight line. I, of course, can control the target myself here and move it around up and down, and the thing adapts quite nicely. This is a little extra piece that you can displace the chain towards an optional pole. This kind of is a little attractor that pulls it toward it. And there's a custom gizmo here that will display the different pieces of the thing. So all of that is necessary here. And I set up many of these little setups manually here. So, you know, I had the different visible objects, and I have the joints here connecting each of the things to the next thing, and here's the end effector, which is what they're all trying to follow around. And I got tired of building them by hand, so I wrote an ARM generator script that I won't go through. You can have a look at it. It takes a prefab for the links and joints and specifies the number of links. They can all be the same length, in which case it's linear, or you can have them graded progressively from a minimum to a maximum length. That's the progressive min-max. And you can taper them so that the diameter of the links up and down changes. And so we have now in the menu system here, where we can look at all the different ones. With the, I have generators here. So I'm generating, I actually went another step further and made a generator. So the generator is making the IK things, and the generator is making a little square of them. And I can move all these different things around. Incidentally, this is a Cinemachine camera. I believe it's on a dolly track that will move the camera around to kind of follow the objects, but it does it from a dolly track. So you can look at the camera system for this if you're interested. So having made a generator, an ARM generator and a generator, I of course then could get crazy with this and make circles of very complex generators. You can see I'm actually getting some lag in here. I'm down to 16 frames per second here as I move things around. But this is doing a lot of work in here, because they're, I forget how many, 20 link generators. So having done all this, it occurred to me that these things kind of look like spiders. And so I added a leg manager script on the target object that moves the base of the chains along as the target does. So I end up with a spider that kind of follows the things around. Of course, there I'm not moving it. If I take manual control here, I can drive my spider across the landscape. I found if I tapered it the other way, the spider looked more realistic. So here's my better spider that has proper shaped legs that they're long and skinny down at the end, and they're tapered and narrow. They're tapered and fat at the top. And so I had a lot of fun with that. And of course, over here we've got transparent objects. These are just all I've changed here is that the link object is made with a transparent thing, and it's all the basic same behavior here. Here's a sphere of objects that I don't know what you do with this, but it looks kind of cool. And you can of course take control of things and drive the target around here, move it up and down and left and right and back and forth. And this sphere of objects tracks the whole thing. So clearly I have too much time on my hands, and I'll stop sharing at this point and take any questions on either the conveyor system or the fast IK. Multiple targets possible. I'll include it, but I just got it from this guy's website, his PDF on how to do this. And I basically worked through the single target but he's got a multiple target IK system, which he applies to humanoid figures so that he can have an object, a targeting object on the foot and a targeting object on the hand, and you can move the hand, and the whole chain of bones that consist of the humanoid body moves appropriately. Let's see.
Do you think you could, like, with your spider, give it a nav mesh controller and, like, I don't know, have a spider chase a character?
Yes.
Something?
Yeah.
That would be frightening.
Yeah. I mean, that little target object is what the whole thing follows.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
And so you could put a nav mesh agent on it, and it would move around the nav mesh, and of course the object's going to move on the nav mesh, and all you do is have the target that the spider followed some displaced distance above it so that the body was not on the ground. I'm not sure what would happen with the feet. I did this on a plane, so I'm not sure. You might have to do some fancy ray casting to get your feet to place on a terrain. But yeah, it's all feasible. All you need is time. Any other questions, comments, suggestions? I had a lot of fun with that conveyor system, and it just, I mean, I'd worked with the old character controller, being able to jump onto moving platforms and have it follow them along, and it was hard to do. You know, it was stuff that had to be in the character controller. Am I standing on a rigid body that is moving? And it manually displaced itself. And so having this, and it may not, I haven't tried it with Elijah, or not Elijah, with what's his name, the character from Standard Assets, or the character controller controlled character. I should do that, see if it works with them too. It may not work with a character controller character because they're not physics objects, but any rigid body controlled character does. Anything else? If not, I'm ready to go.
Ready to go enjoy the nice weather we have.
Yeah, I went skiing yesterday and I want to go skiing again today. It's pretty nice weather.
That actually is a good use for this weather.
It is, yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop recording at this point.